Story 1. The smell my swamp creature dogs carry around for the first 10 minutes after playing outside, the semi-brakes on the highway, and the smell after using a hair dryer for the first time or a heater for the first time that year are ones that bother me consistently. Story 2. Burnt popcorn, hands down. The smell just takes over the whole room and refuses to leave. It is like a reminder that you messed up, and now everyone has got to suffer for it. Haha. Am I right? Story 3. Old fish smell. If we have fish for dinner, the garbage and compost have to be taken out immediately after dinner. The dishes have to get done right away, and every counter cleaned. I will retch if I walk into the kitchen in the morning and smell old fish smell. Story 4. I know there are the usual ones like ammonia or bin smell, but one that actually hurts is hot plastic. Specifically, the type of smell you get from a hot lamp or something. It makes my body kind of clamp up. I can't really breathe well around the smell because it just irritates my body too much. Story 5. I work and produce, and I can tell when there's a rotten bag of potatoes in a second. It's such a particular, disgusting smell that just sticks in your nose all day. That and ripe bananas. I won't stock them unless I have to. They smell like mold to me. Story 6. As a nurse, I've smelled a lot of gross things. I think gastrointestinal bleed feces are some of the worst. It sticks in your nose for the rest of the day, and it permeates down the hallway. Story 7. Bad breath, when it reaches the point of smelling like literal feces, has a very specific odor. I've noticed this on quite a few people, and it always makes me want to retch. As someone who had severe gum issues that resulted in significant halitosis for a couple of months, I sympathize with the fact that it's not always the person's fault, nor is it always due to neglect. However, bad breath is indeed manageable and quite easy not to inflict on others. Getting some soft floss, mouthwash, and brushing your teeth twice a day makes a huge difference. Edit. I realize I didn't make it clear enough, but I'm not criticizing people who can't help it because of a disease. I'm talking about bad breath from adults who have nasty, built-up teeth because they neglect their hygiene. I know people in their 30s who don't floss simply because they don't like to, and you can really tell. Story 8. Walt Disney World in the summer. Tourists with different bathing habits, in the hot Florida sun, sweating profusely, all crammed into a line. Smells awful. Story 9. Well, there is a dead whale on our local beach. It has been putrefying for months and still has many more months to go. So my answer is definitely a putrid dead whale. Story 10. The smell that actually upsets me, I get really angry, is wearing or using clothes that have soured because they have been in the washer too long after washing. If I make a mistake and have left a load, which is rare, I won't just move them, I fix it before drying them. I have a daughter who has 4 children, and I know it's hard, but we live in Mississippi, and you have got to dry them right after the washer stops. I think they're nose blind to it. I don't know how, but that's what I think is happening. Okay, rant over. Story 11. Patchouli. In my youth, I worked in fast food with a girl who would drench herself in patchouli oil. The smell was so strong it got trapped in our freezers. Gross. Story 12. That weird sour formula smell that seemingly every house with small children has. They could even be past formula or diapers, and the house will still smell sour, milky, and vaguely like mildew. I don't know what it is, but I can only stand to be in the homes of people with little kids for a short period of time because it's overwhelming and makes me feel sick. Closely behind is the smell of a cut short cigarette. Don't put the short back in my pack, or everything will smell like wet cigarettes forever. Story 13. Oh boy, I am going to get downvoted to oblivion, but I abhor the smell of weed. I have no moral qualm with it in any way. If you do it, God bless you, and I wish I were like you because you look like you are having a good time. I could just never get past the smell. Story 14. I have never heard anyone else mention this, but there is a sour smell that a dish rag or a dish sponge acquires if it has not been rinsed out well and left to dry properly. It is not mildew, or at least not what I consider mildew. The smell I associate with mildew is much more earthy than what I am referring to here. I am not sure what it is called, or if other people are even as sensitive to it as I am, but I really dislike it. Story 15. Abscesses, draining abscesses. sickly sweet putrescence that lingers. Also, sometimes I can smell that the person who used the bathroom before me has bacterial vaginosis. Not as bad as abscesses, but pretty common. Story 16. The smell of urine. Also, my coworker makes this flavored community coffee, and I think it has chicory root in it. It makes me sick to my stomach. And I love coffee. When I first noticed his coffee was making me feel sick just from smelling it, I took a pregnancy test because no way a smell of coffee would make me feel that way. Nope, it is his coffee. Story 17. Tequila. Had a girlfriend get sick in my car on tequila, and that smell lingered a long time despite multiple cleaning efforts. 40 years later, a whiff of tequila in a mixed drink still makes me want to sympathetically vomit. Story 18. When I was a kid, every few months my aunts, grandma, great-aunts, and others would all come to my parents' house and give each other perms. It was the worst smell I can remember. Story 19. Weed. I am all for legalizing it, but there needs to be some laws as to where one can smoke it. It smells like skunk and burnt skunk waste. Please be courteous and do not be one of those potheads who has to smoke it everywhere for some reason. Story 20. That thick, musky smell that is present in all colognes and perfumes, samples that used to come in magazines, you would open an envelope-type flap and the smell would pour out. It just invades my nostrils and lingers for what seems like forever, as if it overloaded my smell sensors and now they're trying to calm down again. Story 21. There was a mystery smell in one hallway of my local mall that I couldn't identify for the longest time, and every so often, I would smell it in other places too. It took me years to realize it has something to do with nail salons that do gel or acrylics. Maybe it's the glue or one of the powders they use, but it makes my head spin. Story 22. Damp and black mold. I lived in a student house that had mold everywhere. The smell was in my hair, my clothes, everything. I would visit home from university, and when I would open my bag, the smell would come out. I had to throw away much of my clothes when I moved out of there, as even laundry didn't get it out. The whole experience made me shudder every time I get a whiff of that smell. Story 23. I work at an emergency department. I have smelled almost everything. The only one thing I have been unable to get better at tolerating is the smell of vomit. In my opinion, it's worse than poop. It's worse than a decaying tooth. It's worse than rotting flesh. The smell of vomit, whether it's from an average person, a child, a senior, someone really sick, someone not sick other than for scrapes, clear vomit or colored vomit, it's the worst. So much that it always makes me want to vomit myself. My only defense, if I ever have to be with a patient that throws up and or clean vomit, is holding my breath for as long as I need to until I leave the vicinity of the vomit. And to think that smell is natural and normal. It's literally the natural and healthy smell of our stomach acids. We humans stink, literally. Story 24. The slight mildew smell occurs when towels and linens have been left wet for too long. I refuse to own a front-load washer because of it. 99% of them get that funk eventually despite routine cleanings around the gasket. Story 25. Even a faint whiff of it makes me feel nauseous. It wasn't so bad at university when people were smoking mostly resin, but the smell of grass makes me heave, which is a problem because it's so common now that I keep catching a whiff of it when we're out at events or even just shopping. What makes it worse is that I have a really strong stomach in all other situations. This just seems to be my Achilles heel. I think part of it is psychological. Because of my job, I cannot have any drugs in my system at all, even when I'm not on duty, so knowing that, and the fear of being grounded and sacked from my vocation probably contributes to my aversion to the smell of weed. Story 26. Patchouli, most perfumes and cologne, and most household cleaners. Interestingly, if a perfume or cologne leans more towards food, wood, or a specific flower in terms of scents, it doesn't bother me. Story 27. Marijuana. I know I will receive criticism for this. I completely do not mind if people smoke at their homes. It is not an issue if they consume edibles. But please, for the love of all things, stop hitting your weed pen or lighting up a joint in public. You are not being discreet. Bring gummies, I am begging you. Story 28. Artificial vanilla scents used in scented candles, room sprays, perfumes, and lotions literally put my stomach into turmoil and make me nauseous. On the other hand, I love the taste of vanilla ice cream or vanilla-flavored baked goods. Story 29. The sour, mildewy smell of clothing that is not dried thoroughly after being washed or gotten wet, worn by a person that doesn't bathe often enough. That's a killer. Story 30. Weed. No problem with people who want to legalize it, but there's a problem with it not being restricted in location like cigarettes. It's instant nausea for me. Story 31. That outside smell on someone when they come in from being outdoors is something I don't really know how to describe. It's just a very distinct smell. It's not the smell outside that's gross. It's just the smell that lingers on someone when they're back inside. Story 32. I cannot stand the smell of lavender, and everyone looks at me like I'm crazy for it. I don't know, I'm so averse to it. I think I would rather smell rotting meat than lavender. Story 33. Cannabis. I cannot believe anyone saying they love the smell. It smells like someone let a skunk decay in a swamp for a few days, then dried it out enough to smolder.